Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this first session on successful change. As you probably know very well, business analysis is just as much about change as about anything else. We are working in projects, change projects, where we are creating a new version of how our organization works. And we are often part of the process-related aspects or the rational or analytical aspects of making the change happen, but there is another aspect, which is how do you get the change actually implemented in the organization? And I'm really happy that we have two speakers who can share a lot of their experience on how to make change happen and what are the struggles, the hindrances to make change a reality in organizations. The first one, Jan Vermeiren, and second speaker, Friederike Schröder-Pander, will be happy to share their experiences regarding change with you. Feel free to interact in the chat during the session. You can ask questions in the chat, and I will then take them up with Jan and in the second talk with Friederike. Okay, so we can now give the floor to Jan for the first presentation. Good morning, Jan.
Good morning, Philippe.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So, the topic of my session is the hidden reasons why 70% of change projects don't reach their goals. The topic of this session and the content of this session is based on the research of my book, my latest book, The Compassionate Leader, How to Create a Space for an Inspiring Vibe. So, one of the reasons why I wrote this book is that the research from the management consulting company McKinsey showed that 70% of change projects don't reach their goals, despite having great methodologies, great education nowadays, lots of tools. So even when there is so much available these days, still 70% of change projects don't reach their goals. So I thought, okay, we are missing out on something. Yeah, we are missing out on something, but what? So that led me to research. That was not the only reason why I wrote the book, but one of the important points, or let's say entrance points. So when I was researching it, I also got back to the feeling I got when I was working. My previous company was called Networking Coach, and we trained a lot of teams in companies. And one day, one project we were doing was with one team. We learned them a lot. They were eager to learn. They were enthusiastic. They picked it up. They really grasped what we learned them, and they were very successful with it. So that was good. That's also the idea behind it. But then the other team from the same company, from the same department, they were also, let's say, interested in learning. They were cooperating in a session, but they didn't get any, not any results. They did get some results, but not as much as the first team. And that was very weird to me because they were not negative. They were not resisting. They were even asking questions. They were cooperating in the session. And still, there was a big difference between those two teams. So that was one of the days or the moments in my life that I started seeing like, okay, there's something else missing. Now, at that moment in time, I didn't make the time to really investigate what was going on. But now I see that it is not, the world we're looking at is not binary. It's not that people are in a positive state or in a negative state. There is much more. So one of the concepts in the book is about the 4 vibes, I call them. So there is negative, there is positive, but there's also something else. So the vibes, how I call them, are the negative vibe, the neutral vibe, the positive vibe, and the inspiring vibe. So 4 different vibes. Now, I'm going to explain what they are just in a moment, but to really get you, let's say, really connected with this topic or with this subject, Let's tie it to your own situation. So let's do first a small self-assessment, and then I will explain what the vibes are and what the effects of the vibes are, what the consequences of the vibes are, and how it's related to change. So first, take a pen and paper, or something else to write if you're just on your computer, like all of us now. You can also use Word or something, but you're gonna have to add up some numbers. So that's easier sometimes to just write down on a piece of paper and then use your mobile phone with a calculator there. So take something to write. So what you're going to see are 10 statements, and you're going to so the exercise here is that you're going to estimate what your team would respond on average on each statement. And your team could be the team that you're a member of, but could also be a team that you are working with. It could be an internal team, or if you're working for clients, maybe a team at one of your clients. So it doesn't really matter what. Just let's say to get this the topic of this session very close to your own situation, right? So pick one team that you will work with. Then you're going to use a score of 0 to 10, where 0 is totally disagree and 10 is absolutely agree. Well, all right. So the first statement is, there is room for my ideas and suggestions. So think now of the team you have in mind. What would each team member uh, reply to this statement? And then you get the average. So if you think, oh, on average, the team would say, okay, this is 6 out of 10, you write down 6. Again, 0 is absolutely disagree, 10 is absolutely agree. So I think those instructions are clear. So let's go to the next statement. I feel part of the team and I feel completely accepted by the team. What would be the average answer of the team you have in mind? The fourth statement is, when I ask for help, the other team members gladly support me. So when I ask for help, the other team members gladly support me. The fifth statement is, my skills and talents are appreciated and put to use. Then the sixth statement is, I'm stimulated by my manager and colleagues to become the best version of myself. So I'm stimulated by my manager and by my colleagues to become the best version of myself. The seventh statement is, the goals of the team are clear, and it's also clear to me how I can contribute to achieve them. So the goals of the team are clear, and it is also clear to me how I can contribute to achieve them. The eighth statement, it is easy for me to bring up tensions and solve them in a constructive way. So what I mean with this sentence is, it's easy for me to talk about tensions and solve them in a constructive way. 9. The ninth statement is, I dare to be vulnerable. I dare to be vulnerable. And the 10th statement is, I can talk freely about the mistakes I made, my blind spots, my shadow sides, and my weaknesses. So I repeat that. I can talk freely about the mistakes I made, my blind spots, my shadow sides, and my weaknesses. So now you have 10 numbers. So now the assignment is to add all the numbers so you get the score out of 100. And I think it's interesting also to know a little bit from each other what the scores are. So you can put your answer in the chat function. The only let's say problem we have here is that I cannot see the chat. So Philip, who is the moderator, will. So I hear. So feel free to share your score, and then Philip will tell them. So I'm not hearing any scores, so maybe there is something technical going on. So let's just continue with the session then. So how you can relate the scores you have now to the vibes I've shown you. If you have a score below 36, that means that the team is in a negative vibe. When you have a score between 36 and 65, the team is in a neutral vibe. When there is a score between 66 and 85, the team is in a positive vibe. And above 85, the team is in an inspiring vibe. Now, what does it mean? Yeah? What does it mean? So let's get back to the visual of the 4 vibes. So I already shown you a little bit about, let's say, just where the 4 vibes are. But what are the 2 axes? I haven't explained that. So the first axis is how safe does someone feel? How psychologically safe does somebody feel? And the second axis is how supported does a person or a team feel? So those are 2 very important axes. So let's relate now to the vibes. So in the negative vibe, people don't feel safe and don't feel supported. And what they do is that they what you see in their behavior is that they complain a lot, they vent a lot, they'll blame others a lot. So, and they also feel like they are, let's say, rejected from as an individual from a team, or as a team from a department, or as a department from an organization. So they feel excluded. Yeah. And most of the times, yeah, because they are complaining and venting a lot, other people in other vibes, they don't like to get in touch with them. And then people in negative vibe, they say, you see, they are rejecting us. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy there. Yeah. So that's the negative vibe. The neutral vibe, there people already feel a little bit more safe and a little bit more supported. So they don't feel rejected anymore, but they are, let's say, wondering, am I totally accepted by the group? So it's not being rejected, but wondering whether they are accepted by the group. So people in neutral vibe, they don't complain so much, they don't vent so much, they don't blame other people so much, but they still don't feel safe and supported, or they don't feel as safe and supported enough to really, let's say, uh, put their shoulders on the project to really take risks, smaller risks probably in the first instance, but they're still not there yet. So they're still in a self-protective mode. The next vibe is a positive vibe. There, people feel safe and supported enough to take those risks. Yeah, to really say, okay, we don't know what the future will bring, but this is the project. Okay, there are some good ideas behind it. Okay, we believe in it. Let's go for it. So they feel safe and supported enough to really take on the project. And then the people in the inspiring vibe, they feel so safe and so supported that whatever comes up, whatever mistake they made, or whatever they feel about themselves, like, okay, I'm not, let's say, I encounter a blind spot of myself or a shadow side of myself, something I'm not very proud of in my own behavior, that they are that they feel so safe that they share it with their team members, the other team members, with their colleagues, because they feel so supported. And they know that whenever they bring something up, the other team members will help them, let's say, do something about it or get insights so they can grow as a person. So those are the 4 vibes. Now, what are some consequences? Is that people in the negative vibe and the neutral vibe, they are not really open for change yet. Yeah. So one of the mistakes I see a lot of people make is they say, "Oh, people are not really in a negative vibe. They're not complaining. They are not uh, really resisting. So they must be okay with the project." Yeah, that's kind of the binary thinking. But that's let's say not the case in a lot of organizations, a lot of teams. Lots of people nowadays, and especially now in the COVID era, are more in a neutral vibe. So they are, let's say, a little bit more waiting and more looking for ways to feel safe and supported first before they take on a project or they fully cooperate in a project. Yeah, so that's one of the very important takeaways from this session. Also, there is a lot to do about the comfort zone. That you need to challenge people, that you need to get them out of their comfort zone to realize a project. And that's true for people who are in the positive vibe or in the inspiring vibe. Yeah. The comfort zone means that people feel safe and supported enough. And when they are there, then you can get them out of there. Then you can challenge them. You can invite them. Yeah? And for them, that's good. But many people are not in that comfort zone yet. People in native vibe are not in that comfort zone yet. So there, you need to bring them first in that comfort zone. And that's also the mistake I see a lot of people make, especially when you are yourself in the positive or an inspiring vibe. So one of the things also with the vibes is that it takes on the, how do we say that? Let's say a worldview. Let's say you look at the world from your own vibe, and sometimes we make mistakes. We think people are in the same vibe, or they look at the same way at the world, and if they don't do that, they are negative people. But it's many times it's also people who are, yeah, they could be in a negative vibe, but also a lot of time in a neutral vibe. So um, the difference I see in many project leaders, they are excited about a new project. For example, what new technology can bring, how much time we can save, how much faster um, we can service customers. But people in negative vibe, they are more maybe more focused on what does this mean for me, for my job, uh, and job security. What does it mean for the team or the colleague or let's say the whole company? Or is the company going to survive? But because if the company doesn't survive, yeah, I have to find another job. So if we don't realize where people are, we cannot take them all aboard in our new project. So one of the things you need to do, and I will come back later on with some tips how to do that, is to help people get into a positive vibe first before we start a change project.
Jan, I have a
Yes.
question from Birgit related to this. She's asking, how do you handle people with negative vibes? They may feel unsafe because of the structure of the organization, which is not in control of the project.
Yeah, and I think it relates to what I was already saying. Is you have to uh, really focus on what they need to feel safe and what they need to feel supported, and some things you cannot change. Some things you cannot change in let's say. Money wise, for example, people's wages. But then you see, okay, when that's a given, what are the other things we can do that somebody feels safe, and really go into conversation? Because many times we think, we know what's best for other people because we know what we need to feel safe and supported. But it's not always the same as other people. And so really go into dialogue with them, and you can use the do-it-yourself vibe assessment, the 10 statements that I shared before. um, I will also give you the opportunity to get let's say a document. I will send it to you if you want that, so you can use it to help them, but also for yourself, because you also need to feel supported and safe enough to be able to do your job in the best way possible. And yeah, you can use that vibe assessment for yourself, for other people, for teams, individuals. So this is a very small tool. It's also not in the book. For the people who are interested in the book, it's not in the book, but that's a great tool to find out what people need, and you will be surprised how easy it sometimes is.
Yeah, and just using the tool triggers the conversation, and that is already a very good start, I can imagine.
Yes. Yeah, and also one of the things that you do yourself, if you are guiding a team or you're leading a team, is that you have the open mind, that you say, okay,
Mhm.
these are the questions. I'm not going to fill in for them what they need. That's one of the big mistakes that we often make.
Okay, I just checked. There are at the moment no other questions, so please continue.
Okay, thank you. One other thing about let's say two other things that I want to share about the vibes and the consequences of the vibes is that the vibe of the leader is the ceiling for the vibe of the team. So when leaders are in negative vibe, yeah, it will be very hard to have a team that is in the neutral, in the positive or the inspiring vibe. Yeah, so an example I share a lot is that when someone who owns a shop says, "Oh, I have to be at the till to collect the payments because other people, the employees, they steal." So they're in negative vibe. Yeah? And then afterwards they complain to others like, "Yeah, it's hard to find good staff." Yeah, of course, because good staff are in a positive or an inspiring vibe, and they don't want to work for someone who is in a negative vibe. Yeah? But it's many times we don't see it, how our own vibe influences the team we have. So people, so leaders who are in a neutral vibe, they often feel a little bit alone. They are not in that negative vibe, but they feel like, oh, I have to do it myself. I have to do it alone. So the team is there, but yeah, I really have to also give them orders, and they will do it. But yeah, many times they feel alone. Leaders in the positive vibe say, okay, good. The team, they work together. They work together with me, and they give me some inputs, but I still need to, let's say, uh, really lead and be the first one. While in the inspiring vibe, there are changes. Their leaders say, how can I make myself redundant as soon as possible? How can I support the team members to really bring their talents to the table? So how can I make sure that I'm not a blocking factor here? So that's also really a mind shift there. And then the last thing I want to share about the four vibes is nowadays, let's say last decades, lots of teams have changed to become agile teams. Um, agile teams or self-organizing teams, and agile teams are supposed to be self-organizing as well. But one of the pitfalls I see there is that what you need for a really self-organizing team, they need to be an inspiring vibe, to really be able to communicate with each other, to help each other, to to support each other, to make sure everybody feels safe. But in reality, what I see is that a methodology is taken, like Scrum, for example, is taken and it's implemented, and then people need to do the steps. And one of the things that you see a lot is that, let's say, it's kind of forced upon people, and when they are in a neutral vibe, they will do the steps, but they are not able yet to really be self-organizing and help each other, because they are not still in a neutral vibe and not in an inspiring vibe yet. So what you need to do is to bring them first to that inspiring vibe, and then they can really be self-organizing. Sometimes we forget that aspect. We think about the project, the process, but not about the vibe of people. So, vibes. Now, the next topic I want to address is the myth of resistance to change. Now, many people say, people resist change. But that's not actually true. People don't resist change. Change is all around us all the time. Yeah, I'm different than yesterday. Everybody's different than yesterday. Change is inherent to human life, so we don't really resist the change. Yeah, but we see that something is going on. There is resistance. Yeah? So what is really going on? And how I put it is, people, they don't resist change, but they do resist the tensions linked to the change that they don't know how to deal with. Yeah. So there's change and there are tensions linked to that. So it's the tensions that they don't know how to deal with. That's what they resist. So people don't resist the whole concept of change, of the whole change that's going on, but just a smaller part of the tensions that they don't know how to deal with. And if we know that, it becomes much easier to deal with this. And what's also important to know is that there are three kinds of tensions. Let's say I make a distinction between three kinds of tensions. The first one is that the first kind of tension is practical or process tension. So, for example, practical tension is that you want to view this conference and you don't have internet access. That's something practical. A process tension could be like you ordered something on a web shop and you already ordered a lot on that same web shop, and normally you get your order in 2 to 3 days, and now it's already more than 8 days. So something in the process went wrong. Yeah, that's something practical. The second kind of tension is personal tension. Personal tension could be like fear of public speaking, feeling isolated now at home, because we already all have to work at home because of COVID. For people who are going out, maybe again the stress of traffic. Those are all kind of personal tensions. And then the third kind of tension is interpersonal tension between people. Could be between colleagues, with the manager, with the client, with the supplier. So these are three kinds of tensions. Now, what is the problem with tensions? Is the first one is that tensions don't feel nice. So we tend to ignore them. So we say, okay, tension is not here. Okay, I'm ignoring it. But at some moment in time, you need to do something about it. And the more you have it build it up, the worse it gets most of the time. But that's something that we do as humans. We ignore the tensions. And most of the time because we don't know how to really address them or solve them. The second problem is that every tension is considered as a practical tension. So if people are fighting with each other, let's say maybe not even literally, but having a heated discussion, many times we try to solve it in a rational way. And we treat it like a part of the machine that's broken and that needs to be replaced. And that's not always the best solution. And especially if you are a business analyst, you take that analyst part and you really take that focus for some problems, for the practical problems, the process tensions. That's a very good lens to look through, but not for personal and interpersonal tensions. Yeah. And within the third problem you see with tensions that they often become intertwined. They become, let's say, mixed up. And this causes delays and lowers the vibe. Let me give you an example. Um, um, my second job was in a software company, and I was part of the project team. And at a certain moment, a certain day, the phone was ringing next to one of my colleagues. So it rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and I was like, "Hey, Jeroen, are you not picking up that phone?" I said, "No, I'm not going to pick it up." And I said, "Why? Why are you not picking up the phone?" I said, "Yeah, I see on the screen who it is. It's Mr. Janssen. So I'm not picking up the phone." And I'm like, "Mr. Janssen, yes, that's one of our customers. Why are you not picking up the phone?" I said, "Yeah, the last 2 times when I picked up the phone, you started yelling at me, and I don't like that." Um, okay, and that's my answer. And why was he yelling at you? Yeah, because he was not very happy with the changes we made to the software that they are using from us. So okay, but apparently he needs help. How you do it now? Yeah, I'm asking him to put everything on email, and then I reply to him. I said, okay, and how does that work? I said, yeah, take some time, but this works for me. So I said, okay, can I look at the example of that mail? It was pages and pages long with replies and between the lines and different colors. It was like, yeah, there was so much time was gotten into that. So what we see there is, for me, it's a very good example of that there is a practical tension, in this case experienced by Mr. Janssen. Okay, something is wrong with the software that doesn't or that didn't work for him. So that gave him a tension. He was, I don't know, losing time or let's say some tension. We didn't we don't know what, or I don't know what the tension was, but he voiced it in a way towards Jeroen that the tension he felt, yeah, he got out of the system by yelling at Jeroen, yeah, and that created interpersonal tension with Jeroen. So uh, for Jeroen on his side, so this yelling gave him a personal tension. So he said, okay, to solve this practical tension, we're gonna use email. So the problem here is that for just to solve a practical tension, there are two barriers, two layers we have to go through, and this delays so much time. Yeah. And this is just an example of let's say, a few interactions with a customer. But if Jeroen would do that for every customer, he would lose so much time, also for our own company, for our own projects. Yeah. And if you have this situation within a team, it delays everything in the team. So we really need to be able to address those tensions if we want our projects to be successful. Yeah. So what to do? There's a lot of things to do, but the two things I want to share with you in this session is first assess how psychologically safe and supported people feel. Like I already said, you can use that do-it-yourself vibe assessment that I did with you. If you want to receive that, send an email to connect@thecompassionateleader.org. I will happily send you the whole explanation, the whole the statements, the explanation, how you can do it for yourself, with the team, with individuals. The second thing we need is a framework or toolkit to transform the tensions. So that are, let's say, two very important parts. One of the toolkit of frameworks is the do-it process. It's a four-step process that I created while writing the book, The Compassionate Leader. So it's if you want to, let's say, more in detail look at it, you can read it in the book. So what are the 4 steps? The first step is detect and phase the tension. The D stands for detect and phase the tension. This is a step that only costs 1 second, but you really need to take it. You're not ignoring tension, but you say, okay, tension is here and let's face it. Let's do something about it. Then the second tension is second step, excuse me, is understand and solve the tension. So what kind of tension is it? Is it interpersonal, practical, or personal? So that's understanding, and then how to solve it. So this is a framework that you can put your own tools and own methodologies in those boxes here. But if you don't have them, or you want to get some new ones or other ones that you're using, these are the ones I use for interpersonal tension: the compassion technique, compassionate problem solving for practical tension, and the ABC of distressing for personal tension. If you wanna get into those tools, I don't have time to explain them all here. They're in the book. And sometimes when you just use one of the techniques, that's enough, and then the tension is solved. But sometimes you need to go deeper. So the third step, the E stands for embrace and transform the root of the tension. So what is really underlying? What is causing this tension? Here, again, you can put on your own tools or methodologies if you don't have them. The ones I use are compassion quadrants, compassion problem solving, again, but then on a deeper level, and the inner balance technique. And then the fourth step, the T stands for take action. Again, sometimes just solving the tension in step 2 is enough, but sometimes you really want to take action. So you really want to start communicating with someone. In the case of interpersonal tension, compassionate communication I use for that. You can apply the proposal. That was the end result of the compassionate problem solving methodology, and some self-care for personal tension. Now, when I explain this to people, when I show them this one visual, sometimes they say, oh, this is kind of overwhelming, all those different tools. But the good news is that you don't have to use them all at once. And especially if you combine this with vibes, you can see that you only need a few tools to help yourself or other people make the transition from one vibe to another. So for the negative to the neutral vibe, the 2 boxes to work with are the interpersonal tension, the personal tension one in the second step. In the case, let's say my tools are the compassion technique and the ABC of distressing. When you want to go from the neutral vibe to the positive vibe, there are these boxes that you need to address. And from the positive to inspiring vibe, it's the compassion quadrants and balance technique. These are really, you can use these tools, especially the inner balance technique, to grow as a person, as yourself. Yeah, what you see a lot from positive to inspiring vibe, it's about knowing yourself, knowing how you work, what are your, let's say, your shadow sides, which for me are talents that are not discovered yet. So this is a tool to do that. Yeah. So this makes it a little bit more, let's say workable if you let's say only focus on which vibe transitions you want to assist. So these are the tools, let's say the steps you can take. Now, where does this fit in a bigger picture? Many times people are also, when you work with teams, there are team development programs. The program that I use to help people to be in the inspiring, or to get into an inspiring vibe, and that's also the vibe where teams are really high performing, is this one. 3 phases. The first one is align the team. The second one is deal with tensions, and the third one is communicate. The steps here, and you can relate to let's say other team development programs, but I'm going to show you in a minute why I'm sharing this. So what are the steps here? Align the team and personal mission. Share your added value, also what you need to feel supported. And it's also related to that one small exercise we did. Then the second phase is how to solve personal stress, understand the root of conflicts and misunderstandings, and resolve that. And then the third phase is how to voice and discover how to voice your own needs and concern, and how to discover the needs and concerns of other people. Then propose a solution and decide with consent, so not with um, uh, someone who is dominating from a leader position or from an informal leader position, and agree on outcome and timing. Now, many times team development programs use kind of similar ways for phase 1 and 3, but most of the times the second phase is forgotten, it's overlooked. So for the second phase, we need a framework or a toolkit like the do it process to really be able to solve those tensions, because teams, they work together pretty well until something goes wrong, until tensions start to build up, and then the vibe uh, usually goes down unless you have the tools to really deal that. So you see, when there are tensions, that are the points that the vibe goes down, and if you're able to really address those moments immediately and to solve those tensions, and if necessary transform the underlying root or cause of it, then the vibe stays the same or even increases. Yeah. So that's why it's so crucial, certainly in these times, um, to to have such a toolkit at your disposal. So we're coming to the end of my session. I talked about the book. Of course, if you want to buy the book, I would be happy. I would be very happy that you do that. But I want to make the threshold that you already can start working with these concepts as low as possible. So I offer also some free stuff. First, like I already mentioned, the do-it-yourself vibe assessment. Then also I've written a small guide for business owners and managers to increase ownership within a team without worrying about results. And many times when you say, okay, there needs to be more ownership from a team or team members, but it's hard to really let them have that ownership because we're worrying about what will happen, what will be the consequences. So I wrote a small guide for that, how to solve that. And also written an ebook about the 5 most overlooked dynamics that impact agile, self-organizing, and traditional teams. Already shared uh, a few of the dynamics in this session, but we'll learn a little bit more in that ebook. So if you're interested in that, send an email to connect@thecompassionateleader.org, and I happily send those resources over to you. So I'm addressing Philip now. Philip, um, are there any more questions at this moment?
Well, we have no live questions at the moment, but we did have a pre-submitted question by one of the attendees before the session, how to get people open-minded and welcoming change. So I think you've covered this to some extent already in the presentation.
Yes.
Do you perhaps have any practical tips to share how to get started with it?
Yeah, first is to get, let's say, assess in which vibe people are, and maybe just start with yourself. Like, okay, they're not in not binary thinking, not negative or positive. It's maybe you're neutral. Um, then the second step I would take is ask them questions or have them do that vibe assessment, and yeah, really see what do they need to feel safe and supported. Because when people feel safe and supported, and they feel that let's say a team leader, whether they're the formal or the informal team leader, um, is really putting the attention towards this and really wants to do, and not something like you say you do, but you're not going to follow up on that, but you really mean it. That's already a big step, because many times leaders and project managers, they are more focused on the results, and they think they know what everybody needs, but often that's not the case.
Yeah, being genuine, really listening to the people and empathize with them.
Yeah, and it's not one of those things that we all need just have those skills, and but our school system is not in that direction. It's more about knowledge and more about those solving practical tensions, but not the personal, not the interpersonal ones. So the 10 statements from the vibe assessment could already give a start or an opening.
Yeah. You would expect that someone who is very much involved with change himself doesn't struggle with helping people through change. Is that a correct statement, or is it still something that you are looking for yourself, how to do this well?
Yeah, for me it's like, yeah, for me big eye opener was that people are not resisting change, but tensions that are related to change. Because if you say people are resisting change, it's such a big thing, it's such a big mountain that you cannot say, oh, I don't know how to start, right? But if you just go look, okay, what are the tensions that they are resisting and how we can solve them together or help them, or then it becomes much more actionable. It's much easier to do something with that. So that was for me, when I was researching for the book, was a big eye opener for me.
Okay, that's interesting, and I'm pretty sure that's something people can reflect upon. So please do so if you are looking at this session, at this talk. Reflect upon how will you be using this, where you might struggle into trying to apply this, and then you can still get back, get back to the chat, and we can ask questions. If you would like to share your own experience, we can get you into the studio after the second talk, so that is also possible. If you feel up for that, you're very welcome. Thank you, Jan, for your presentation. We can now move on. And so we do have an applause. It's maybe online and digital, but not virtual. It is a real applause. Thank you very much, Jan. And we can now move on to Friederike's presentation, who will be sharing her practical experience of a large change journey, let me say. Good morning, Friederike. Welcome.
Good morning.
It's yours.
Thank you very much, Philip. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to share with you a real-life case, and that's the case of the HR agency of the Flemish government, who is in transformation to become a more process-oriented organization. And I called it the rocky path because such a huge transformation, it is always a rocky path and never a smooth path. Before I go into the details of the transformation and how we are tackling this, I have to give a bit background on the Flemish government and on the HR agency so that you can understand better the huge challenges they are facing. The Flemish government consists of three parts, and that is the government of Flanders, the Flemish parliament, and the Flemish administration. The Flemish administration is divided in 11 policy areas with more than 50 entities, little organizations working on these policy areas, and the HR agency is one of them. Well, it is often said that the public sector and the private sector, they differ a lot, and that in the public sector and the government, people are not moving, it's not changing, they are working very slowly. Well, from my experience that I have in the public sector, and I have a quite broad experience in the public sector, I don't see this, or I don't see this anymore. It's true that it differs from the private sector, but not as much as we might think. All entities of the Flemish administrations, for example, they all have a mission, also a mission. They have a vision, they have goals they need to reach, and a strategy in order to reach their goals. And with that, they also define targets. They have expectations from their stakeholders, and their stakeholders, at the one hand, is the government. At the other hand, it can be other entities, can be citizens, can be organizations. So there are quite a lot of stakeholders. And they also need to realize savings. Not only the private sector needs to realize savings. And if you see at the difference, in my opinion, the biggest difference is that the public sector doesn't have competitors. But on the other hand, they have to tackle with another difficulty, because every few years for the Flemish government, it's every 5 years, the government is changing. And with a changing government, there are also the goals changing, goals added. There are mergers, so entities are merged together, or parts of entities are merged into other entities. New structures arise with that and have to be integrated. So as you can see, also the Flemish government, the Flemish administration is with that in constant change. Like Jan already said also in his presentation, change is everywhere, so also at the public sector. What did the Flemish government decided in 2015? In 2015, they decided they want to increase the quality of service delivery towards the citizens, the organizations, and their own employees by establishing shared service centers. They wanted to increase the customer focus, and they wanted to realize gain in efficiency by using the economy of scale. So making it bigger, you can do everything with less people. That was the idea, and it's also based on benchmarking. So this is not invented by the government. And this is also where the new HR agency was born. So the HR agency called Agentschap Overheidspersoneel, or shortly AGO, existed already, but got another task, and that was combining all the HR administration for all the entities of the Flemish government. And how was it realized? Here you see all these entities with AGO in the middle. Every entity had their own, or has their own HR department, HR group. And the goal was that every year some entities would transfer the people working on the HR administration to AGO, shrinking in their own entities, and the new HR administration parts would become part of the new organization AGO. Now, if you look well, at the challenges, I think you can imagine already that this is a huge challenge. Since 2016, every year, new people came over to AGO, new customers had to be treated at AGO, and it all has to be combined, keeping the business running. So what are the challenges? First of all, on average, only 80% of the employees were transferred. That is because the economy of scale, making it bigger, we can do the same with less people. At the same time, we have to keep the business running. We have to keep our customers happy. The customers, in the case of our HR agency, well, our main customers are other entities and the employees of the Flemish government, of Flemish administration and government. Different cultures had to be smoothed together. Different ways of working were coming together. Furthermore, the transfer of employees were mandatory. Some employees saw this as a chance to change and to see something new. Other employees were not as that happy, as you can imagine. And all this with having a fast-growing organization every year, again, these changes and these adaptations, you can imagine that the challenges were quite high. If we look once at the numbers, you can see the numbers of customers. So customers in this case are the employees of the Flemish government. Here you can see that in 2016, we started with 6 different HR administrations coming over with less than 10,000 customers, and at the end we ended with nearly 30,000. So it was an increase of 286%. At the same time, the number of employees were increased only with 154%, but we had to make sure that our business was still running. So I am sure you feel the pressure on the organization, on the employees. How did Argo, the HR agency, deal with this organizational change? Well, they defined 4 strategic objectives. 3 of them are derived by the objectives of the Flemish government, and that is increased quality of service delivery, customer focus, and gain of efficiency. And they added a 4th one, and that's employee focus. Well, with such a change, you have to keep also in mind that there are people working on the services, on the processes, so you mustn't forget the employees in the whole journey. And you see very often that the employees that are a forgotten group in organizations, that you focus on process, you focus on services, on customers, but you forget your employees. But the employees are the people that are doing the work. And what did they do at the HR agency? They started a program which is just finalized, the program Optimization Service Delivery. This was an organization-wide program, so with impact on the whole organization, where various optimization projects were started and defined and executed in order to increase the quality we delivered, increase the standardization, but on the other hand also to increase the customer satisfaction. In the middle of 2018, well, there was still a low customer satisfaction, and then was decided to start a project. Argo becomes a process-oriented organization. Why was it done? Well, we saw that all the people came over with their customers, with the entities. They had all their own processes, their own way of working. So we had to standardize. That's one reason for scale of economy. Well, you have to standardize, otherwise you cannot realize the gain of efficiency. Of course, we also wanted to improve the processes. We wanted to, at the same time, to focus on the customer, to be or become more transparent internally, because there were gray zones in several processes and several way of workings, but also transparent for the customer, so that they understood better how we were working, and to gain a bit more trust from them. And last but not least, we also stimulated by all this, of course, the cross-functional collaboration, focusing on the end-to-end processes where the customer is at the beginning and really at the end, and breaking the silos of the different departments. This all was also in line with the strategy of Argo, which is operational excellence, which is, let's say, a normal derivative from the economy of scale. If you look at the project, I would like to go into the different dimensions we tackled and we are still tackling. Well, the project will end at the end of the year, but then the working of the process group will go into the normal working of the organization. So it will be continued, and we still have to do steps, of course. And the different dimensions are the process mindset, process governance, process architecture, training and coaching, and the change management part. As you will see, the more technical, I will start with a process mindset. So in a process mindset, it's very important that you first clarify for the organization what is a process? Because if you ask 10 people, you get about 5 different answers. And it's very important to put the noses in the same directions to avoid misunderstandings. A difficult part is to introduce the process thinking. So to change the mindset from, well, I work in tasks, I work in my function, in my department, into the process thinking. I am part of a chain of activities, cross-organizational, well, or cross-functional, to reach objectives for our customers. And with that also comes the notion of what is an end-to-end process? Why should we think out of our department walls of boundaries? And what does it mean, customer focus? So the last one is still a challenge. For example, the case handlers that are in the front office, in the front line, talking to the customers. They want to be, of course, as customer friendly as possible, but it's very important to clarify also that customer focus is not the same as customer intimacy. So because of the shared service center, the economy of scale, it was natural that Argo chooses for operational excellence and not for customer intimacy. What does it mean? If we had chosen customer intimacy, it would mean that we have for every process more than 50 different variants, customized, tailored to the needs and the wishes of every customer. So what customer focus means, we have standardized processes, but we have a good service that we provide for all customers, with a strong focus of the customer. So we give the same service to all our customers. So this is the process mindset. The next one is the process governance. Process governance is about the process organization. You can see in the image at the right part that it's crossing borders, crossing silos in the organization. So about the process organization, but also about the reporting and decision structure. For example, how do we assign process owner, from which part of the organizations they come? How do we validate processes? Who needs to validate processes? What has to be validated? And last but not least, the tension between process and functional organization, when does function is in the primary seat and when does the process organization, in which parts more important. So these are all things that have to be decided and tackled in the process governance. If we look at the process organization, here you can see how we at our HR agency are currently organized. So we have a strong network of process owners, and as you can see, they come from different levels of the organizations. We have also some process owners in the middle management, but most of them are from lower levels. The process owners are supported for methodology, for support, for collaboration by mainly the process expert. Process expert and process coordinator. The process coordinator is more a managerial role, collaborates with a manager that has also the C role, operational excellence. Or the managers are also sitting in the process board, which is part of the management team, and there the processes are validated. So this is the construction. Well, we had several different approaches, but this is the one that is currently working well, and it will differ from organization to organization. So you have to make sure that it fits your organization and not put one approach for process organization to an organization. And how do we improve processes? Well, we have both. We do it in projects, but we do it also in continuous process improvement, where every process owner aims to improve daily, weekly, monthly his or her process in small steps. When do we do projects? Well, we do projects if we see that, for example, the customer is complaining a lot about a specific process, or we see that there is a lot of, well, it's one gray zone and a lot of things need to be clarified. If we see there's not no collaboration and there are a lot of departments included in this process, so there can be different reasons to start a project for this. But if it's a project or if it's continuous a process improvement, at the end we aim in small steps or in bigger steps to get up one or more steps on the ladder, on the quality ladder, on the improvement ladder for the internal operations, how it is done, and also in terms of customer support and customer satisfaction. The next part is the process architecture, and the process architecture is more a technical part. However, internally, it's also about thinking end to end. So this helps to explain to the people what it's about. It's a good mean, and it's something to keep in mind and to hold on when working with processes. So what would we do for our process architecture? First of all, we define the different levels of the process architecture. On which levels do we want to work? On which levels do we elaborate processes? We then defined also the modeling notations. We are working modeling with BPMN. And also we defined modeling conventions with best practices that are well known and used, I think, in many parts of the world. So we didn't reinvent the wheel in this. And last but not least, we defined and we created one place for all processes. So this is also still in transition. We have a lot of shared drives. We have a lot of different team environments, intranet sites, SharePoint sites, and we want to have all process information, documentation on one place. I will show you the process architecture we defined at our HR agency, and we start with a high-level process map where you can see the management processes, the core processes, and the supporting processes. Below, the core processes that are more process domains. So if we go into the HR service deliveries, on the next level you see a bunch of process groups divided by certain topics. If you go into one of these process groups, you see a list of processes that are operational processes. Either they are modeled in a value chain, or if they are separated, they are put simply as a list. And if you click on one of the processes, you get the operational process modeled in BPMN. So this is a model where you can click through and you can see very easily, visually, when you're working on a process, where are you in terms of the process map of Argo in the organization. The one place for all processes, we created for that a SharePoint page where you can find, or where you will find all the material, all the process documentation, but also other information on processes, like the different roles in the organization, who is process owner for which processes, and so on. So we find it very important to have one place so that people know where to find, also for processes that are further away from them, or the information. The fourth part is the training and coaching, which is, in my eyes, a quite important part. It is important as a group of process, let's say process professionals, process experts, not to stay in the ivory tower, but to spread the message, to train people, to support people, so that the business can do it also themselves. So to do that, you need to define the different target groups, because different groups have different needs, and they also have different training needs for each target group. It's very important that you take some time for that, because if you train them things that are not interested, train them, and they don't understand, then you are losing them. And then especially for the process owners, to support them, but also for middle managers, for project leaders who are doing process improvement projects, but also for other personnel. It's really important to have an open door, to coach on request, be responsive if somebody has a question, if somebody has an idea, leave the door open, talk to the people. And what I find one of the most important thing is encourage the people, encourage also the process owners, and empower them. Give them not only the role, but give them also the room to do their job, to act as a process owner. I find this very important. The last part is the change management part. And I doubted very much which image I should use for this change management part. And as you saw at the slide before already, I've chosen this image. Why? Because I see that many organizations, they think that change management is about identifying the persons that resist, that disturb us to reach our goals from our projects, from our change. Well, I see it the other way around. Change is about supporting every single employee to do the change with us. Because as Jan already told, it's about not resisting the change, but resisting the tensions. And tensions, it's very personal. Tensions, it's based on how you are as a person, your character, your experience, your knowledge, your place in the organization. So it's very, very personal. And the organizational change is the sum of the individual changes. So if you only focus on the organization and you don't look at the individuals, you will fail to change. And I find it very important not to think about, well, it's a disturbing factor because he resists. No, to listen, to ask the people how they feel, why they feel like they are, and to find a way to support them to do the change. So that's all I want to say about this change management part. So these were the different dimensions we are working on. We worked on for the last 2 years, and we are still working on. But what is the situation of the HR agency at the current moment? Where are we on a scale of the BPM maturity? So you see the typical 5-level stages of BPM maturity. And we started 2 years ago on level 1, initial level. There were different initiatives and different parts of the organization. Some processes were described in process descriptions, delimited to departments. In other parts, there were some processes modeled, also delimited to most of the time to their department. And now, 2 years later, we are at a far level 2. And if you look at the literature, you see that on average, for an organization, it takes 2 years to go from one level to another. Well, it depends very much on the size of the organization, on what kind of organization it is, also how hierarchical the organization is organized. So if I see that, and if I look back at the last 2 years, I think we didn't do it in a bad way. We reached already quite a lot. If you remember all these challenges that we have, it's not a bad journey, but of course it is a rocky path. It didn't went as smoothly as we wanted. The next step is to go to level 3. The step to level 3, it's more difficult than the step from level 1 to level 2, but we are currently preparing for it. So to finalize, I want to tell you the biggest challenges that we faced and that we are still facing. First of all, changing the mindset, bringing the end-to-end thinking, the process thinking into the organization stays a challenge. Also, people that are that know about that, they are going with us from time to time. They say, oh yes, I didn't think end to end. Well, I have to remind myself. So this is something that takes some years, and this is normal for the whole organization to change. Secondly, process versus operational work. Process work is seen as additional work. So if there are time constraints, if we have problems with resources, operational work is of course always on the first place, because we have to deliver service to our customers. So these are also tensions, and sometimes we don't have enough time for our process work. And another very important part is, and I see this not only the 3 things, not only in our HR agency, but also in other organizations, involving the middle management can be quite a challenge. Some middle managers think, I'm manager, I know it already. Other people think, middle managers think, it's not for me, I'm a manager, it's for my personal only. And a third group thinks, perhaps, well, I have to protect my territory. I don't want to make everything transparent and work together with others. So there's always a small group of middle managers that you have to focus on. And this is all about not being conscious of not being knowledgeable about the things. And most of the time, I don't see it's about people that want to, that don't want the change, but it's a bit about having fear also about their position. To conclude, most of the people say lessons learned, but this is something I see in all the organizations again. So I turned it to do not forget to. Do not forget to define the state you want to reach. It's important for you to define your actions you need to take, but it's also important in your messages you bring towards the organization and towards the employees. The second is go step by step and set the right pace. What is the right pace? Well, that is the pace of the organization. If you with a subgroup grow faster than the whole organization, then your approach will fail. So you have to feel very well what is the pace of the organization and to go with this pace. And last but not least, do not forget to communicate, communicate, communicate. Very important, of course, to train and support, and most of all, also to listen. To listen if somebody has fears or resists, but also listen if somebody has good ideas, involve the people, try to do the transformation as a team, as an organization. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm curious to know if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Friederike, for this interesting presentation based upon your own experience. And I think it's really relevant. The move to a process-oriented organization is something that many organizations are going through, and it's something that keeps on needing updates, let's say. So I think it's really relevant. Thank you for that. We have a question. And I notice I still need to get into the habit of having this online applause. So we have a question indeed from Valerie. And I think we can also get Jan back in the studio, because he might also have some thoughts on the questions. She says, talking to people to know how they feel, what they need, is something that is part of both presentations. And she also says that in these times where a lot of work is done remotely, that's more challenging, more difficult. There are no coffee corner conversations and other informal conversations. So what would your suggestions be to deal with that?
Well, I think the current situation has advantages and disadvantages, but also advantages. So, well, it's true, we don't have coffee corners, so we don't talk easily to other people that you're not talking to normally. However, if you look at how organizations are dealing with their office space, you see very often that teams that belong together, they are also sitting together. And how we are organized in pre-corona times, well, we had 3 towers, and well, very often you didn't see the people from the tower 1. So there was already less a mix of people. We started to change that, but then Corona came. Now I find it also an advantage in Corona times. We have these online meetings. Well, we do it with Teams. I think many organizations do it with Teams or with Zoom. So you have your Teams conversation. Because of Corona, I see people are asking each other more often, how do you feel? Not because of the working context, more about the private, the Corona context. How do you feel? And people tell much more about their feel. And I think this is also a chance to take this as the basis for conversation about the change. How do you feel, and how do you feel in the change? And I see, well, in my position, I'm talking constantly with people. I'm coaching people, supporting people via Teams meetings. And I think, and I have also meetings with more people. One of the advantages is also you look more at the people because they are in front of you in the Teams screen. You see them. In a normal meeting, you are spread it in the meeting room, and you don't look so much at each other, and you don't see how you see less how they react and how they feel. And I think this is also an advantage of having a meeting, an online meeting. So I don't see more difficulties, except that you have less informal conversations at the coffee corner. But for what means the change, what means in terms of coaching and going with the people, I see in our organization more advantages than disadvantages. I don't know, Jan, if you see it the same way or in a different way.
But yeah, I think very valid point that you're making, Friederike. I want to add a few things. I see some people more, let's say, people-oriented, and people-oriented, other more task-oriented. And the ones who are more people-oriented, they're really missing out on those informal moments. So if that's what people need, and then I refer back to my session, to feel safe and supported, then you really need to plan it more. It's okay. The informal ways the informality is a little bit lost, but then you really need to add time before, after sessions, online sessions. I like to work with Zoom a lot because it's with the breakout rooms. I've experienced in both in teams inside an organization and also across organizations, that people really like to just be in small groups, 2, 3, 4 people maybe, that they feel also gives us safe feeling, a small cocon. So that's why I like that. It's for me more flexible at this moment in time than Teams. I know there are changes underway, but for me it's like planning it. One of the advantages I see I've experienced is that that I also see more in people's homes, and sometimes a cat runs over or a child comes, and that we are getting more tolerant to those let's say non-professional parts of our lives. So that I see that as an advantage. The last thing that I want to say about that is also keep in mind that some people don't feel safe to put on their camera because of their home situation, because they're a little bit ashamed maybe, or they think, yeah, I need to look professionally and my children are there. Or what I also heard, especially from the States, that people are, let's say, the top managers that are making a lot of money, they live in big houses, that, let's say, the normal employees, they say, oh, this is such a difference with my house, I don't feel comfortable putting myself out there, so they turn off their cameras. So that's our new things that we need to keep in mind. And if you have an office space, then the surrounding is the same for everybody. And so again, for me, it's about feeling safe and feeling supported, and that's different for everybody, like you also mentioned in your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Feel free to share your background, even if it is not as clean as this one. This is just a fake setup. I can't show my camera because otherwise you would see the garbage lying around, as a metaphor. And I remember being in a call with someone, and to get good lighting, otherwise I'm quite dark in the face at my desk, I turned around with the laptop on my lap, and that the consequence was that the camera was facing my books, my bookshelf, which I had just cleaned up in the morning. And the person on the other side said, "Oh no, not yet another person with a clean bookshelf." She had a lot of books lying around in her bag. So I put up the camera and showed her my desk, which was very cluttered, and she felt comfortable right away. So there are indeed ways to make people feel comfortable. So that's a very good and practical point that you mentioned. I have another question from Christina. She says, it's a great session. How do you know when is the best moment to resolve tension?
For me, it's when you see it, when you feel it, when you detect it in one way or another. But sometimes it's very obvious, and sometimes you just have a feeling, right? And that's something, let's say, from a rational mind. It's not that we many times we hesitate, but we feel it sometimes in our bodies. Yeah, that we enter someone, and that's something I learned during my career. I come from a, let's say, IT background and very rational, and I felt a lot of the tensions on in the teams or the clients I was going to, but I was not. I didn't have any reference. I didn't learn it. Nobody really made me aware of that. But now I see it, and now, I address it. But for me, and addressing it is in a how to say that, investigating way. Like, oh, could it be like this, or am I feeling this? Or are you also feeling it? So very, let's say, not accusing or whatever. Right? So just I call it investigative way.
Yeah. Okay.
I would like to add, when should you address it? Well, from the moment you see or feel it. So don't wait to tackle it, but do it right at the beginning, because the longer you wait, the more tension will grow, and that will be more and more difficult to resolve it.
Okay, good point. I'm just quickly checking if there are any further questions. Not at the moment. I have maybe one follow-up question related to the fact that end-to-end processes are becoming the norm. Cross-functional working is becoming more of a norm. Is that a typical example of something that can create tensions for people that you then need to highlight and discuss and start working with? Or do you feel that the concept of cross-functional working, of end-to-end processes, is not really a driver for tensions?
Well, I don't think that the end-to-end processes or the thinking in end-to-end processes create the tension. It's more about, well, you were safe in your hierarchical organization, but now you have a double layer. You have the hierarchical organization, but you have your process layer on top of it. So, for example, the process owners, they need to they have to split their time in process work for their process and their operational work. And that creates tensions. And also, not everybody is used to work together cross-functional and to think end-to-end. So to let it grow, you need other skills. If you have facilitate a session only with people from your own department, it's a different thing than facilitating a session with people from also other departments, sometimes even higher from the hierarchy. So you have to keep in mind that process is about not about the hierarchy, forget the hierarchical hierarchy, but working together. And this creates a bit of tensions also, because people need to get other skills. They learn other skills, and that's something we try to support also. For example, last week, I wasn't available to support a process owner that had to present her process to one, not the process board, and another board with also a lot of managers. And she was a bit scared, but she did it. And after words, she sent me an email and said, "Friederike, I'm really proud I did it, and I'm really proud I succeeded in it." So that's the way we let the people grow. But upfront, of course, there's always a bit of tension, a bit of fear, but then you try to support them as much as possible so that, they all grow in the organization. Yeah.
Yeah, just like to add one thing is about the hierarchy, and that's something that we take from history, hierarchical ways of working, and that's something that's for some people very wired in their systems. Some people also choose to not to be an entrepreneur and be their own leader professionally, but to follow somebody else, and some people also, let's say career-wise, they feel like, okay, I'm only getting somewhere when I can lead a team, and then that's those patterns are sometimes much more powerful than we think, and now I'm going to say something that many people might not relate to, or think, oh, what's this? Is many times we step into patterns, let's say more from our personal lives. Let's say many times we step into parent-child patterns without being consciously aware of that. But it's the consequence is that we, as employees, that we're waiting for the parent, and that the parent is paternalizing the team. So for me, one very important thing is when I notice that, and especially if you go into more like agile working or cross-functional working, is really seeing those patterns. But it also needs to be, if you really want to solve this, self-reflection, and then the vibe needs to be high enough to feel safe and supported enough to really look at what's going on inside yourself. So that's not always an easy thing to do, but teams are really want to be high performing, and high performing means to me results and well-being together. That's one of the things to look at. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We are already into the break for just a few minutes, so it's time to wrap up. If attendees have any further questions or feedback, feel free to send it in the chat. The chat stays available. And of course, you can contact Jan and Friederike also in the conference platform and on LinkedIn. You can find the information on the platform and on our website. And maybe a few practical tips. So halfway through the break, there is a mindfulness moment with Kathy Burkich, which is also somewhat related to the tension and making sure you feel tension with people while you are professionally collaborating with them. So you can join one of those moments during the break. And co-organizer IT Works is also organizing a conference on digital workplaces, which is a little bit related to some of the things we discussed here, how to deal with these things in a remote context. So I will also drop the link in the chat for people to check if they are interested. Thank you very much, Jan and Friederike, for your presentation, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.